No, no, no. You get your ass back in that designer's room and you make sure that Shinx is in this damn game. They weren't in the last game, and that was the only game where I could have justifiably ran around with a Luxray behind me the entire time. I will not lose this opportunity again. What do you mean they need to make room for the new Charizard form? Hey yo, what's good though? Soul here, and welcome back to the story mode. Getting to the topic at hand here, it appears we have yet to talk about the potential Pokedex situation that's going on with Pokemon Winds and Waves. I thought we had had a conversation about this before, but apparently not when it comes to Generation 10 yet, so that's fun. I think this is probably going to be a little bit on the shorter side, so why don't you go ahead, get cozy real quick, grab a nice cold glass of Coke Zero or something like that, and maybe, get that steak that's cooking out there, sizzling up, and make sure to put some syrup on there while we talk about the potential Pokedex situation in Pokemon Winds and Waves. Quick obligatory beginning of the video begging, if you guys could consider dropping a like, a comment, and maybe a subscription, and maybe hyping the video, as not only does that help out the channel a ton to help outreach and stuff like that, but it tells me that you guys are enjoying the content so that I can continue putting out more for you guys. I'm really hoping that we can get to 11K so that we could do a nice massive giveaway for Pokemon Winds and Waves by the time that it drops, maybe this time next year. So if you guys could help me out to help do that, that would be absolutely splendid, and I'd appreciate it so much. The first major thing that we should probably acknowledge is the little bit of knowledge that we do have, which is the potential fact that Pokemon Winds and Waves might actually contain the largest amount of new Pokemon that we have ever seen for a new generation. To my understanding, and feel free to correct me if I'm wrong here, but for a long time, Generation 5 held that crown. The record's at like 156 with that or something like that, which is a ridiculous number. But now we're potentially looking at even more than that somehow. Again, of course, this is nothing but a rumor, so make sure to take everything that you hear, leaks or otherwise, with a grain of salt. But if we are working with some legitimate information, that means we are looking at potentially 180, maybe close to 200 new Pokemon. Which is absolutely absurd when you really sit down and think about it, because then you're sitting there and thinking, well, after the Permadexit situation that we had back in Generation 8, where half the Pokedex was cut, and ever since then, we haven't had the full roster of Pokemon available to us, even in post-game, throughout the entirety of the Switch era, what in the world is this Pokedex about to look like for us? Now, let's get one thing very clear. I am absolutely more than game for an absurd number of new Pokemon. New Blood to that degree offers a variety of new experiences, new looks, new shinies, new abilities to look forward to on the battlefield. All these new evolutions that I get to be surprised by for the first time. So to be able to have something like that in abundance sounds like a great time to me for the most part. Every single time I boot up a new Pokemon game going into a new generation, I try to utilize a team of Pokemon that I have never used before. Obviously, for remakes and stuff like that, I try to do my best as well, but I'm more than familiar with a lot of the Pokemon available at that point in time, so usually I'll still try to use Pokemon I don't usually use, but when it comes to a new generation, I always, no matter what, always have a full team of 6 of brand new Pokemon. Because yes, while it is easy to just kick back and go with what you know, it's always so much more interesting and fun to me to explore new territory. So, realistically, on the first playthrough of Winds and Waves, even if Shinx is available, I'm not going to use it because I want to see what else is out there. Who knows? I might find a new favorite. That's extremely unlikely that anybody's ever going to replace my GOAT, my god. But it's always extremely interesting to see what these other Pokemon are capable of. So, overall, I'm just really excited to see what's brought to the table. However, I did mention a concern beforehand that I think still definitely applies here. We face a very similar situation with the general masses, where they have a very hefty preference on the Pokemon that they already know and love. To my understanding, people were very indifferent on Generation 5 back in the day because all of the familiar Pokemon that they knew and loved weren't available to them until post-game. So despite all of the new content and new Pokemon available to them, a lot of people kind of had a sour spot when it came to Generation 5 back in the day. Now, personally, I never had that problem. The story for Generation 5 was so generally engaging that I had no qualms or problems with the availability of Pokemon. I never even considered that to be a major problem. I just played with what was available to me. During that era, I wasn't on the internet nearly as much as I am now. Like, I wasn't in tune with all of the general opinions of people talking about Pokemon. I wasn't watching like super heavily opinionated YouTubers like that. So I never really saw how people actually felt about Generation 5 at the time. And it wasn't until I got way older that I saw that most people that had a problem with Generation 5 mostly had a problem with the Pokedex. Now, to be clear here, I think that this situation is less likely to happen again, given the fact that my generation at the time just didn't have as much of a voice at the time. So we didn't have as much of a problem with it then. So I have to imagine we likely won't have a similar situation now. But I feel like there definitely will be a bit of a divide, especially if a majority of the available base game Pokedex is a majority of the new Pokemon. Based on the fact that we have now well over 1,000 Pokemon easily, especially with these new additions, we'll probably have like a base roster of like maybe 500 Pokemon, maybe? But even that's a lot. That's a really scary amount, especially when you consider that the most likely DLC that we're gonna get the following year is gonna add an additional like maybe 200 Pokemon, probably, maybe even 250, 300. So we're probably gonna have access to a lot of Pokemon still. Once upon a time, I definitely was a much heftier advocate for every Pokemon returning, having the full Pokedex available to us in the post game. But now that we've come this far, now that I've gotten older and I understand game development a bit more, I think it's a lot more interesting and entertaining and much more realistic to not have every single one, especially when it comes to newer Pokemon games. It gives us something to look forward to. Who's gonna make it in? Who's not gonna make it in? Whoever does make it in, are they getting new abilities, new forms? Things are just a lot more interesting that way. So even if my favorite Pokemon don't make it into the game, I'm not gonna sit here and freaking implode or anything like that. So that's my general thoughts on that aspect. Moving on, the next thing that I have listed here is the potential of a new typing. I don't think I've talked about this yet, and if anybody's interested in a full video or maybe a response video, we could definitely do something like this, but I think it's kind of prime time for a new typing, no? We're finally hitting the double digits of Pokemon after a major anniversary where this game was first announced, and we just had our major release for a sequel title to a game that introduced a new typing for the first time since Pokemon has ever been introduced to us. We're finally completely used to fairy typing now. So maybe this is just a me thing, and you can call me wrong, you can call me crazy or sick even for thinking this way. But I feel like it might be a little bit of time for some new blood, some new action, something to stir things up a little bit more. What that typing could be, I have no idea. This is definitely something we should and could have a discussion about, because there's definitely still a lot of possibilities of what we can receive, probably. But I feel like one of the reasons that they're adding so many new Pokemon, if that is the case, is because if they are introducing a new typing, they don't want to have to change up a lot of the older Pokemon that have already been well established and maybe even given new typings already. Why go back and rework an older Pokemon when you can give us a regional variant with a new typing included so that you can work that Pokemon from the ground up instead? Because you gotta remember, when it comes to Nintendo and Pokemon, they try and get as technical with their statistics as much as humanly possible. So any form changes, any regional variants and stuff like that counts as new Pokemon for them. So even if they are technically adding 200 plus new Pokemon to the game, a good chunk of those may be familiar Pokemon with form changes or regional variants or something along those lines. So internally, I imagine up at Game Freak, it would be a lot easier to make these from the ground up Pokemon, whether it be regional variants or completely brand new Pokemon, and add the new typing that way so that they don't have to completely readjust what's already present. Pokemon as we know them can stay the same with little to no worry, and they could potentially have a new regional variant that's available within this game. Of course, I would prefer it if some of my favorite Pokemon like Shinx could get updates to their toolkit, maybe a new typing, maybe a couple of new moves, and a couple of stat boosts here and there to make them a little bit more viable, but you know, there's other ways to go about that. So hopefully they have found some way to do something like that if we were to get a new typing, but I feel like this does seem prime time to add a new typing. One of the last major things that I have listed here is my personal need for them to make it so that capturing new Pokemon can be just as fun as it is in like the Legends titles. And when I say that, I specifically mean something along the lines of what we had in Legends Arceus. Never in my entire Pokemon career had I been addicted to a Pokemon game like I was with Legends Arceus. It wasn't because of the story, it wasn't because of the gameplay, it was because of that goddamned Pokedex. The thing is that the Pokedex in of itself in Legends Arceus was directly tied to the progression system. Once you learn that, it was a matter of figuring out exactly how the Pokedex entries worked. Because of the time period that Pokemon Legends Arceus took place in, you did not have your traditional Pokedex. You were operating with a notebook, pen and paper. Well, I guess maybe quill and paper is probably more accurate, but you get what I'm getting at. It was more than just having to catch a Pokemon and have it be registered in your Pokedex. No, you were jotting down every little single thing in that damn book. Each of those Pokemon's Pokedex entries had specific missions for you, and the more missions that you filled out for them, the more points you would attain towards your rank. So you had to start off small. You had your starter Pokemon and you had to have it use a certain move a couple of times, have it get hit by certain moves a couple of times. But obviously this applied to its evolutions as well, so you wanted to make sure to take advantage of every single one of those missions before you leveled it up and evolved it. But then you realize just how much you get out of filling out that Pokemon's Pokedex entry completely, so then you want to do it again and again with other Pokemon that you may have caught. So now you're stuck in this crazy loop where you're going back and forth utilizing everything within your arsenal to make sure that you could fill out as many Pokedex entries as possible. And I truly believe that this made for an extremely solid system, because not only did it incentivize you to fill out the Pokedex, it incentivized you to actually utilize and battle against as many Pokemon as humanly possible. Now, I will say that initially I thought that I had to max out every single Pokemon's Pokedex entry to get the shiny charm. Thank Shinx, that was never the case. You just had to catch every Pokemon as per usual. But the fact that I was not only willing to do that, but I was having fun doing it, kind of speaks volumes to what kind of a concept they introduced here. This all being said, I'm really praying that by the time we get to Pokemon Winds and Waves, we do have a much more fun and interesting way of data collecting for Pokemon. I appreciate Pokemon Scarlet and Violet for having its own little reward system for every 5 or 10 Pokemon that you would catch. At first it'd be small things like Pokeballs or experience candies, but then eventually it evolved into like stones and other types of useful items. I think that that in of itself was a solid design choice, but not quite what we had in Legends Arceus. But I won't give it too much flack because, again, these games were developed in tandem with one another. They didn't cross-reference each other much, and that's why we didn't see as much of Pokemon Legends Arceus in Scarlet and Violet as we would have liked. And then you look to Pokemon Legends ZA, which had a very similar issue. While it was cool to have another reward system for the Pokedex entries, it still just did not feel on par with what we had. And the way that they had those missions set up was a lot more monotonous, not very varied, you know? Again, it's not like I hated it or anything like that, but the Pokedex in ZA definitely wasn't its driving force for me. So what I'm hoping here is that they are taking advantage of what we've learned from these last 3 games and make the best possible Pokedex situation that we've had in a Pokemon game. Because me personally, I would not be upset in any way, shape, or form if they decided to bring back the mission-based system for each individual Pokemon. Of course, that might be pushing it a little bit, considering the fact that we very well may have 500 plus Pokemon on our hands here, but I'm hoping that maybe they could find some really fun middle ground and make it so that some of these missions apply to every Pokemon and not every single individual Pokemon. That would take way too long, right? And I don't know, maybe they can make it so that you can earn cool titles and rewards for like maxing out a Pokemon's Pokedex entry so that you had actual incentive to learn about each individual Pokemon to have those titles so that when you went online, people would be like, oh, this guy knows how to use his Luxray. You know what I'm saying? Like, I don't know, just fun little stupid stuff like that that I think would make Pokemon data collecting a lot more interesting. But this one I won't bank too much on. I frankly just would not be surprised if we didn't see any real massive change to the Pokedex situation here. I very much surmise we're looking at another Scarlet and Violet, like every couple of Pokemon you get a new reward type situation. So whatever, I mean, I guess I can live with that as long as everything else about the game is fun. But overall, that just about does it for the thoughts that I have on the Pokedex situation in Pokemon Winds and Waves, because this is something that's been on the back of my mind, and I'm surprised that I never actually ended up talking about it, because this is something that we've talked about for every major generation. But this is one of the few times where we actually have a little bit more inside information in regards to what the Pokedex might look like this time around. So hopefully some of the stuff that I mentioned here makes a little bit of sense, and some of these things can come to fruition to make Pokemon Winds and Waves an even better experience. But hey, you know what? Maybe that's just me. So that just about does it for this one. Fun fact, I actually had a full video, fully like recorded and everything, and I was gonna start editing until I realized that that prior video is something that I had already recorded pretty much bar for bar 8 months prior. That is bad. That's so bad. So I had to kind of haul ass on this one a little bit. This one I made sure we didn't talk about specifically for Generation 10. So hopefully, you know, this one makes a lot of sense for you guys and stuff like that. Hopefully this was a fun topic to have, and fun topic to have a discussion on, excuse me. But hopefully this is something that you guys enjoyed. But it seems like we are kind of tapping into like familiar territory with like talking points and stuff like that. So again, I'm definitely paying attention to the comics. I'm comments. I'm taking notes on things that you guys want me to talk about. So if you guys have any suggestions or videos that you would like me to tackle and stuff like that, be sure to leave that stuff in the comment section below. Or again, feel free to join up in the Discord, where we have our video ideas tab in there, so that you guys could shoot me video ideas directly and I can save them that way. So somehow, some way, if you guys are interested in that, go ahead and let me know. But otherwise, I think that just about does it for me for this one in particular. Anyhow, just a quick reminder again that new heavily edited videos every Wednesday and ramble modes every Thursday and Friday. And aside from that, let's just hope we can upkeep this. So I'm gonna keep this going for as long as I can. But regardless of that, I'm passing the mic over in your direction, and I want you guys to tell me everything that you're thinking in the comments below. How do you guys feel about the current Pokedex situation? Do you think that we should take inspiration from prior Pokemon games to maybe make this one of the best data collecting situations that we've had mechanic wise in a Pokemon game, and they could learn a lot from stuff like Pokemon Legends Arceus or Pokemon Scarlet and Violet and Legends EA to make the best situation possible? Or are you on the opposing side? This does not matter at all. This is not something that we need to even bother with or even think about or consider at all. This is not even a situation. Tell me everything that you guys are thinking in the comment section below, because you know for a fact that I am always going to be down there with you guys. But with that, it does appear to be the skedaddle o'clock, so I'm going to go ahead and do just that. I'd like to thank you guys ever so much for watching. I truly do hope you enjoyed. Do me the greatest favor of dropping a like and a comment, and consider subscribing for more content just like this here. And with that, I'm gone. So thanks again, hope you enjoyed, and I'll be seeing you guys in the next video. Do me the greatest favor of taking good ass care, and I'll see you all next time. Bye!
I stay funky, doing donuts in a bin. I stay funky, battle goes wherever I am. I stay funky, I don't know who's ready to spit. Just know you're going down with my 58 clips. I stay funky, honey's taking back to the crib. I stay funky, get the club popped off like pins.